Okay, I'm teaching class. Hi guys, how we doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing okay, thanks. I'm gonna let a few more people in. We'll take just one more minute, get everybody in here.
That didn't even count. She nibbled on that shit.
All right, guys. Well, welcome to week 9, officially halfway through the semester. Give yourself a round of applause for surviving this far. Good job. And thank you to those of you guys that turn on your cameras. It's great to see your beautiful smiling faces. All right, got a couple more people coming in. Awesome, Harry. Thanks for getting that done. All right. Try to get as many people in as we can. All right. Okay, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started for today. So, thanks for hanging with me the last week. It has been mass chaos. And I hope that us kind of taking a little bit of a break in between chapters 5 and 6 helped you guys be able to better understand the material and also hopefully relieved some stress and some stuff to do. So, I'm going to start out with just kind of a climate poll, try to figure out how everybody is doing. And so you've seen this before. I'm hoping this week is different though. So, how are you feeling about life as a student? All right, just got a couple more. We'll give you 10 more seconds. Okay. Well, I'm going to take this as good news. So, yes, it's still hard. Life is still hard. It's still winning, but we're pretty bimodal today. So, that's great. And so, a lot of you guys are also getting classes figured out and finding a groove. So, that's wonderful. Um, just talk to me a little bit about what your guys' situation is. Are things just getting harder as the semester goes on because there's like more work to do and the concepts are harder, or are we still having kind of management issues? What do you think the issue is?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay. Okay, I get that. Anybody else?
One thing that you do that I really like is you add the assignments to the calendars. It's kind of hard to keep up when the professors don't put it on the calendar because you kind of have to go back and check and see, oh, what do I have to do? What do I not have to do? And
Yeah.
I'm dealing with that right now because an assignment was submitted to the wrong folder. So I'm hoping I can still get credit for one of my other animal science classes, but
Oh
yeah,
man.
just time management.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys feel like your professors kind of have a groove at this point? I know that it was really frustrating in the beginning. But do you feel like there's a little bit more normalcy to it or not really?
Honestly, no, because one of my professors has no like. I don't want to be mean, but they have like no organization. They are completely confusing like it's horrible.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. So sorry. That stuff is so hard. Um, yeah. Tim, I'm with you. Tim just put into the chats too, like, feels like he ended up with more hours of material to learn now that we're online. And I feel the same way as a instructor. Like what used to take me 50 minutes to deliver, to a class in an in-person setting is taking me like between 3 and 4 hours to get done. And so everything is just taking longer. And so my solution to that is just to back off what we're doing. So that's why we're not doing midterms in this class. We're just doing quizzes. We're keeping it on a weekly basis, and so I'm hoping that is um, helping with the whole being overwhelmed thing. So um, I do have to apologize, guys. I am way behind on grading, and I don't see me catching up this week. It's probably going to be the next a couple of weeks. So just hang with me. I'm very, very sorry about that. And just realize that yes, I know I'm behind, and I will get it done. I promise. So we will keep pushing to um, make sure that we're delivering the best experience to you guys as possible. All right. So I've got a couple of questions about chapter 6 material. So, and I'm totally fine if you guys look at, reference material, I'll give you a minute one if you want to pull the PowerPoints up, if you want to pull your notes out, that type of thing. I just have a couple of questions about puberty. I am one of those, I don't know. I've been told I'm weird before, and I'm fine with that. You have to have a weird sense of humor to be in reproductive physiology anyway, but all of my grad work was around puberty. And so I really, really enjoy this, and I can talk to you about it for forever. And so on that note, that's why I get kind of excited about it. And Dr. Doyle did such a good job. I really liked the way that he actually was able to record the video of him like writing stuff in. I have not figured out how to do that yet. So meanwhile, he's been gracious enough to just let us use his videos. And so from here to the end of the semester, you guys are going to see his videos in the recording, because we do, Dr. Doyle and I are the fearsome twosome. So we do everything together when it comes to this class. And so, because we want to make sure that folks that take it from him and folks that take it from me get a very similar experience. Just on another note, as you guys are pulling chapter 6 stuff up, just keep in mind this is the last week of mandatory advising. If you guys have not done that yet, and it's mandatory for all majors in the College of Ag. So fall is always mandatory, spring is optional for a couple of majors. So just make sure that you touch base with your advisor, get your classes in place, or touch base with the Student Success Office. I know Jemmy and Lindsay have been helping a lot of people as well. Also this week on Thursday, I think, is the job fair. So it's a virtual job fair. It's done through Handshake, which I don't know much about other than I see it pop up on when I go to Blackboard. So if you guys are looking for internships and jobs, I would, try to spend some time this week getting a resume pulled together and then visit the job fair and see if there's anything out there. I know that we've got probably 20 to 25 companies that are ag based that are going to participate. So just be aware of that as well. Okay, let's go ahead and get to some questions. So I'll give you guys, well, this first one should be okay. Yeah, this one won't take you long. So relative to the chapter 6 material, puberty out of the Singer text, how would you rate your understanding of puberty? So everything from I know nothing to I've got this, bring on new material. All right. Good afternoon, Marcy. I just let you in. We're just in the middle of a really quick poll if you have a chance to participate. And then we're also going to ask some questions about chapter 6 material if you want to pull up any lectures or notes that you have.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. We'll give you guys about 20 more seconds on this question. All righty. So first of all, I just have to say that I am super excited that nobody put I know nothing. So that's a win for today. Good job, guys. So we're actually on the backside of this bell curve, so that's great. So everything from I can pull a C on a pop quiz to I understand most of the material but don't feel super confident in our ability to communicate it, and that is totally fine. I am happy with where we're at and what you guys are perceiving right now. So I always want to do this quiz. In fact, I'm going to take a picture of it real quick because I want to get into a couple of questions about the material, and then I may ask you again. And so we'll see if stuff shifts around. I'm hoping more people actually are in the 3, 4, and 5 category after that. So, okay, let's see here. So first question. The hypothalamus is inherently what? Male or female? It will take about 30 more seconds. All right. So excellent job. So the hypothalamus is inherently female. And so if you guys recall back to chapter 4, embryology, where we talked about how the different sexes differentiated through the gestational process, we spent a lot of time talking about the SRY gene that was located on the Y chromosome. And so if a fetus is male, it's going to have an X and a Y chromosome, and that SRY gene is going to be present on the chromosome. And if everything is normal, it's going to go through transcription, translation, and we're going to see production of the SRY protein. And that protein is then going to start a cascade of events that is going to develop the individual or the fetus into the male. And then if SRY protein is not present, so in the case of a female where they have two X chromosomes and Y is not present at all, then the default system is that the hypothalamus will be inherently female and will develop both a surge center and a tonic center, whereas the male is only going to develop what of those two centers? What type of or what area of the hypothalamus does the male have compared to the female? You guys can just shout it out. Tonic center, exactly. So the male and the female have the tonic center and the hypothalamus, but the female is special. So she has the surge center as well. And that really kind of kicks off this conversation about puberty. So excellent job. And I hope that if you were a little bit confused on that, you now have a better understanding of it. All right, so next quiz question. There's a little bit of confusion with this on the quiz. I got an email about it. So what hormone defeminizes the brain? All right, we'll take 30 more seconds. All right, cool. We're done. So, all right. So, yes, testosterone is actually the hormone that defeminizes the brain. And so you guys did great with that. And so I'm going to switch gears and share my screen with you and just show you where that information is coming from. And so with this, that probably was not what I wanted to do. There we go. All right. So this was a figure out of the Singer text. It's also a figure in the chapter 6 material, but it really gives you a good basis of why the hypothalamus is inherently female and also what defeminizes the brain. So keep in mind that we have during the gestation process and through endocrinology, the gonads, both in the male and the female, so the testes in the male and the ovary in the female, are going to be producing the sex hormones, the testosterone and estradiol. And so if a male is present at all, whether it's a male fetus by itself or a male fetus with a twin female, testosterone is going to be produced from his testes. And testosterone has the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. And so that's what's being shown here. And once testosterone is in the brain, then the enzyme aromatase will then convert testosterone to estradiol. Okay, so testosterone is the hormone that defeminizes the brain, and it has to be present in order for aromatase to go to work. And so the estradiol is definitely not the hormone that defeminizes the brain, because estradiol, when it's produced from the fetal ovary, it is going to be blocked by alpha, and it's going to bind to alpha fetoprotein. And so it's going to be blocked and can't cross the blood brain barrier. And so that is why the surge center and the tonic center are going to be preserved in the female brain here in the hypothalamus, is because of that alpha fetoprotein action. And so testosterone is kind of crazy. It's like that ghost on Ghostbusters that can just morph through walls. Testosterone can just go through the blood-brain barrier, but alpha fetoprotein is gonna grab onto estradiol and not let it cross the blood-brain barrier. And so that's where we get that defeminization action happen in the brain, which results in a male that has just the tonic center of the hypothalamus. All right. So is everybody clear on that? Are there any questions about that? So Priscilla asked a great question. So testosterone shuts off the GnRH surge center. So Priscilla, it's a little bit more complicated than that. It doesn't necessarily shut it down, but it will neutralize the GnRH neurons that would normally be developed within the surge center. So it neutralizes them. It doesn't affect the neurons that are a part of the tonic center, just the ones associated with the surge center. And so, yeah, it's going to neutralize them. They aren't going to be functional. Therefore, we end up with a male that just has the tonic center in the hypothalamus. All right. Cool. So is everybody good? Just give me a thumbs up if you have a good handle on that material. Okay, great. Great, great, great. Beautiful. Okay, so I want to, that was the last poll that I had, but I just wanted to make sure that we had a good understanding of puberty in the female and what was really happening. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and and so that we're all on the same page. All right, let me get to the right slide. I should just make this bigger so I can see what I'm looking at. Okay. Okay. So when it comes to puberty in the female, receptors are the key function here. So with receptors, keep in mind those receptors are going to be either on the cell membrane or within the intercellular material if it's a steroid receptor. And so what ends up happening is that as the female grows, okay, and so she's getting bigger, her body is putting more weight on, it has adequate leptin levels or fat levels. All of that stuff is signaling to the brain that this female is really close to being ready to carry a pregnancy. Okay, and so that's the first threshold there. So once the system determines that that female is ready to carry a pregnancy, it's then going to start transitioning through that puberty process. So the one thing I will reiterate here is that puberty is not an on-off switch. Okay, it doesn't happen quickly. It doesn't happen overnight. It is a process that takes several weeks and sometimes several months to occur, depending on the species. And so receptors here are the key ingredient into transitioning a female from a prepubertal state to a pubertal state. And those receptors, keep in mind, they're made up of protein, right? So they have to go through a pretty intensive production process. That gene has to be turned on. It has to go through transcription. It has to go through translation to where we get a protein actually produced that's going to serve as a receptor. And so with the receptors, keep in mind that we're talking about the receptors in the hypothalamus, and specifically the GnRH receptors in the tonic center and the surge center of the female. Okay, so what ends up happening during this pubertal process is that puberty is really characterized as occurring when the hypothalamus neurons begin to produce GnRH in a high enough quantity to affect the gonad. And so females will gain the ability to respond to estradiol. And so when we have estradiol in the system, there's going to be few receptors for estradiol in the tonic center. There's just not very many of them. Okay, so those few receptors, or the presence of those few receptors, will then allow an increase in estradiol blood levels without affecting GnRH, without decreasing GnRH. And so that decreasing sensitivity in the tonic center to the negative feedback of estradiol will then increase GnRH pulse frequency. Okay, so it's almost like a smoke and mirrors effect. Okay, so it's really all about the receptor's ability to be sensitive to estradiol in the hypothalamus. And so we can see that the tonic center is going to be less sensitive to the negative feedback of estradiol. That less sensitive negative feedback is then going to increase GnRH frequency, which is then going to increase LH and FSH frequency in the anterior pituitary, which is then going to increase follicular growth, which is then going to increase estradiol production. Okay, so that follicle, keep in mind, that's going to be on the ovary. It's going to be growing in response to FSH and LH. And the more that it grows, the more estradiol that it produces. And the more estradiol is then going to circle back up to the brain. And so the ability for that female to actually respond to the increasing amounts of estradiol coming from the ovary is really what is going to trigger that pubertal process. And so just some specifics here about estradiol receptors. So during the transition of puberty, the number of estradiol receptors on the tonic center of the hypothalamus are going to decrease. And the number of estradiol receptors on the surge center increase. And so the estradiol receptors that are decreasing on the tonic center are going to allow the estradiol being put into the blood system from the ovary to rise. Okay. And that it's that rising of the estradiol in the blood that is going to create a threshold level that is then going to lead to that pre-ovulatory surge coming from the surge center in the hypothalamus of GnRH. So the surge center is when it's triggered and it reaches that threshold. Remember, it's going to be like turning a water faucet on full blast. It's going to push a ton, or it's going to let a lot of GnRH into the system. It's going to flow through the hypophyseal portal system. It's then going to go into the anterior pituitary and bind its receptors on, this is a good question. Somebody can remind us. What cell type in the anterior pituitary is going to bind GnRH? What cell type in the anterior pituitary is going to bind GnRH? Feel free to shout it out. And silence. That's okay. That's okay. We got somebody on chat. Hang on. So not the GnRH receptor. Okay, so keep in mind that the hypothalamus at the base of the brain is going to be, let's go back here. So the hypothalamus here is going to be dumping a ton of GnRH into the system. It's then going to come down to the anterior lobe of the pituitary here. And the pituitary is going to produce what hormones? Maybe we should start there and then we'll back up into cell type. So the anterior pituitary is going to produce what hormones in response to GnRH?
FSH and LH.
Exactly. Thank you, Zoe. So FSH and LH are going to be produced from the anterior lobe of the pituitary. So what cell type makes FSH and LH?
Is it the gonadotropin cells?
It is, Sophia. Good job. So it's the gonadotrope cells. Okay, so those gonadotrope cells are going to have receptors for GnRH on the surface of the cell membrane. And it's going to bind GnRH. It's going to kick off that secondary messenger system where we get cyclic AMP and then protein kinase A and all that stuff we talked about in chapter 5. And that is going to produce FSH and LH and release it from that gonadotrope cell. And then FSH and LH are then going to target what in the female? What anatomical structure?
The ovary.
Yeah, the ovary. Okay. And on the ovary, it's gonna end up targeting one of two major structures, right? Either the CL or the follicle. So good. I feel like you guys are able to work through some of these things. So which was the goal, especially when it comes to puberty. And what I wanted to do with that explanation was just talk to you a little bit about the difference between the surge center and the tonic center and how they really interacted with one another relative to the receptors for estradiol that was feeding back to the hypothalamus. All right. So is everybody good with how puberty happens, what that transition is? There's a lot of extra stuff that is going to go on that is going to control puberty, like that female is going to have to be a certain size. She's going to have a certain amount of fat associated with it. All of that good stuff. But the take home message is that the hypothalamus is going to lose basically sensitivity to the negative feedback of estradiol in the tonic center, which is going to allow estradiol to bind in the surge center to reach that threshold before it releases GnRH in that pre-ovulatory surge. So this is not an easy concept. If you guys are confused, that is okay. It's going to take some practice to get through it, okay? And so this is where making sure that you're reading the textbook will really help, because Singer's explanation in the textbook is actually probably the best that I have seen. And I've read a bunch of reproductive textbooks. So, all right. So is everybody okay with this? Like if I gave you a 20-point question and 20 minutes, you could write out the pubertal process. Okay, cool. So if you can't, that should be your goal. Okay. So when we get done here, maybe try to get a few minutes to try to bring all these concepts together. So the cool part about puberty is we've learned just probably in the last 10 years that, and we put it in at the end of that lecture, is that the kisspeptin neurons were actually kind of the gatekeepers for GnRH. And so kisspeptin is one of the proteins that I studied as part of my PhD work, and it's tiny. It's only 54 amino acids long. It's really similar in size to GnRH. And so it's tiny, but man, it has a huge impact because it can basically say, yep, this female is ready to go into puberty, or nope, not yet, based on all the feedback it's getting. So, all right, cool. All right. Sorry, I got a comment, so I'm just looking. Yes, Harry, to your comment, that's correct. So, okay, cool. So I hope you guys are feeling like all of the studying that we did at the beginning of the semester. So like female and male anatomy, embryology, and more specifically endocrinology in chapter 5, that stuff is starting to come together. Chapter 6 was the first chapter where a lot of that stuff came together. The rest of the semester is going to be a lot of the same. So if you guys are feeling like you don't have a good handle on anatomy or embryology or endocrinology, that's worth spending some more time on. Okay, because those things are really going to, they're the foundational principles that are going to allow us to talk about where we're headed this week, which is all about cyclicity. So now that we have, and we're going to talk more often than not about females in this class compared to males. We're going to spend a little bit of time in males on chapter 10, but females just have a lot going on, right? That's why they're complicated, FYI. And so we're going to start talking about cyclicity in chapter 7. And so that's where we are at this week. So let me go ahead and just reshare my screen. We'll get back to Blackboard, make sure everybody knows where we're at. Make sure I know where I'm at. All right, so we are officially in week 9 down here. And we are starting to work through chapter 7 in the Singer textbooks, which is all about the anestrus and the estrus cycle. So I just call it cyclicity for short. And again, we're going to use Dr. Doyle's recordings. And so you guys have a note guide with quite a bit of space in between the bullet points because Dr. Doyle actually will go in and write that information in. And you've got 2 videos to watch. I think one is like 19 minutes and one is 21 or 22 minutes. And then a quiz to take before Friday at 5 p.m. So that is what we're at. That's what we've got this week. Next week, you guys will probably see another self-study or a kind of a worksheet to work through as well. But we're just kind of rocking and rolling through this material, and this is where it really, really starts to get fun. I mean, I thought chapter 6 was fun, but a lot of people tell me it's overwhelming, so I get it. But now we're going to be able to kind of like start to problem solve some stuff and to bring in some of the management principles. So like, great, Casey, all of this stuff is really, wonderful. You're teaching us about cyclicity and puberty and that type of stuff, but what does it mean on the ranch? And so, if we are interested in trying to do artificial insemination in sheep or in cows or in hogs or goats or whatever, mastering the cyclicity information and knowing the difference between the luteal phase and the follicular phase, which is where we're going chapter 8 and chapter 9, becomes really, really important. So this is the stuff that we can actually problem solve and apply back to livestock production. Okay, so that's kind of what I had for you guys. I do want to re-ask this poll question because I want to see if we changed it all. So let me just go back to this really quickly. Okay, so how do you rate your understanding of puberty now? All right, we'll give you 10 more seconds. All righty. So we'll end polling, and I'm holding my phone up to try to compare. Hey, we shifted big time from 3 to 4. So that makes me feel better. So thanks for at least making me feel better. I hope it's true. I hope it's true. And I know it is. You guys are honest. So awesome. Well, guys, I can hang out for the next 11 minutes or so if you guys have questions. If you feel comfortable with where we're at and what's due this week, feel free to jump off if you've got other things to do. And meanwhile, I'll just kind of hang out. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording real quick. And I'll get this up on